So today I'd like to tell you how you can convert your existing web application into the mobile app, connect in-app payments to it, and make money with it. So I will guide you through the steps that are necessary to convert such an application. And I thought to myself when I got this requirement was, is Angular even a good mobile framework? We all know it's a great web framework, but does it work for mobile applications? Because there are no native mobile features. There is no cross-platform support like in Flutter and React Native, and it's also slower in development, or it used to be slower in development than Flutter or React, because now with Signal Forms, as we just discussed, it's going to be better. But what if after years of development of a big and successful project, a client now wants to target a new platform, create a new revenue source on App Store and Google Play, cost efficiently reuse the same features as for the web application, and also keep the existing code unchanged? And last year, I had such a success story. I created such an application for my client, and I'm not allowed to tell the exact numbers, but in 2 months, it managed to generate six-digit revenue. And I'd like to explore the key steps involved into the process of creating such an application. And I remember the day when my client asked me, can we just take our web application, publish it to the App Store? I had so many questions and doubts in my head, like how it's going to look like, how it's going to feel like. Does it work with Angular? So we know there is Ionic framework. Should we introduce it? And so many questions this day, and I responded, absolutely, let's do it right now. But then I faced real challenges. So first of all, we had an existing UI with all the components, with header, with footer, with content, and we know there is an Ionic framework. How can we create a mobile application from that without duplicating the code, creating separate footers, headers, and everything for the mobile device now? And also, many features of this project dependent on a browser API for downloading files, for opening links in new tabs, for example, and it doesn't exist on a mobile device. So how do we integrate the mobile API into that? And at the very end, also, there are very strict payment guidelines in the App Store and Google Play, because Apple and Google want to take commission from each payment for your application. And if you try to somehow bypass their payment guidelines, for example, redirect to another payment provider, you're going to be blocked forever at the App Store with this bundle ID. So it's illegal, straight to jail for this at the App Store. And the solution to integrating mobile APIs was to install the Capacitor library, which is, by the way, created by the Ionic framework team. And it's a lightweight library, which is a cross-platform runtime for the web applications. So it just wraps the web application inside a mobile app. And you can write your project once in Angular, for example, and build it for iOS and for Android at the same time. And this way, there is no need for Ionic components, dependencies, because it just wraps the web view and provides a bridge between the Angular code or backend code and the device API. So there are a lot of features which Capacitor has, like camera, file system access, geolocation, haptics, basically everything the device can do, you can do with your Angular application. And in many applications like this, which support both web platform and mobile platform, you will see constructions like this. So if we are in a mobile platform, call the mobile logic. If we are in a web browser, call the browser logic. And this is what we generally want to avoid at any cost, because this if-else logic will spread all over the application and the code will become unmaintainable, and we want to avoid this. So we had an NX monorepo with one application, so we added another one there, and we had around 70 feature libraries in this NX monorepo. And the question is, how do we introduce mobile API there in the existing features? So, for example, if we wanted to open the new link in a browser, it's not possible anymore on the mobile. So, how do we introduce mobile logic in here without changing anything in the existing code? And the solution to this is to hide this behind an interface, for example, link opener, which has an open method. and create two separate implementations of this interface, one for mobile and one for web. So the one for web just calls the already known window open, which opens a new tab. And for the mobile device, we create a separate implementation which opens the in-app browser, completely separate logic. And in order to call this logic correctly from the shared feature, we can provide a necessary service with the injection token. And injection token is, in my opinion, a feature that makes Angular stand out from all other frameworks because it lets you create really flexible constructions. And in your shared features, in your existing code, it's sufficient to just depend on the abstract interface, on the abstract logic. And there is no need to tell, do you want to open the in-app browser or something in the new tab? And a very important point is that the application has to support proper mobile user experience, because when you submit your application to the App Store, real people, real testers will download it and test it and check it for accessibility, for usability, for some red flags, which I'm going to mention further. And the application simply has to look good. It has to have the mobile first design adapted very well, usable, and layout has to be optimized for mobile. And in a browser, we have these buttons for back and forth navigation. Of course, it doesn't exist on a mobile device, so you have to implement the gesture support so that user can navigate the app without the browser controls. And also, you can implement push notifications to be able to engage with your users, and it will also make your mobile application different from the web application, because it's also a very important point for the submission review. And when you are developing such an application, how can you really deploy it? How can you publish it to the App Store and Google Play? So you have to download the Xcode and Android Studio, register your accounts and at Apple and Google, and you will have to create a bundle ID for your application, which is unique. So the application can have a logo, a name, a description, screenshots, anything, and it can change over time completely. But your bundle ID always stays the same, because this is a unique identifier of your application. If your application gets banned for some violations by bundle ID, so it's you will have to create another one. And with Xcode and Android Studio, you can publish your application, and it takes, in my experience, 2 days on average for the application to be reviewed and feedback to be provided to you, or it can be approved and you can publish it right away. And what is actually about the in-app payments? Because this is this is the reason why we would create such applications, right? So you need a payment provider in order to implement the in-app payments, because Android and Apple have completely separate implementations of payments. And from your Angular code, you'd like to, and also from your backend, you'd like to call a single API in order to handle the purchases. And also a payment provider, which is a nice bonus. They provide some informative statistics, dashboards, where you can see how many users have bought some product, or how much time does it take for a user to download your app and then proceed to the first purchase. This is very informative statistics. And for the payment providers, there are two key players on the market right now. These are RevenueCat and Conversion. Conversion is a bit more affordable compared to RevenueCat to a certain degree, because up to a certain revenue, you don't pay anything, and you start paying once the revenue exceeds some threshold. But RevenueCat has better documentation, in my opinion. It has bigger clients, so we perceived it as a safer option, so we went with RevenueCat. And once you have selected the payment provider, you register there, and you have to create your in-app products at Apple and Google separately. These are the products which are going to be purchased by the users. And once you created them, you can import them to the payment provider in one place and then fetch them from your payment provider to your application. And I will explain how it works when you, with a concrete example of Angular and some backend, for example. When you want to show the list of products, you have to call the getProducts method of your payment provider. You get the list, each item has an ID. You can show it with such nice cards with the button purchase. And once the user presses this purchase button, you call the purchase method of the payment provider with an ID. And what it does is you are probably very familiar with that. It opens the native pop-up where user can confirm the purchase with a Face ID or a password from the Google account. And while all this purchase is happening, after it happened, the payment provider has to call an endpoint on your backend, and you have to implement an endpoint so that you can receive the status of your purchase and save to the database that okay, this user has this product, and after user can log out and log in, your application will show and or unlock some features for this user that user has paid for. And very important, while all this payment process with your payment provider and backend is happening, your frontend has to somehow get the information that the payment was successful or not. And for this, you can implement polling. For example, you can poll your backend status endpoint every 5 or 10 seconds until you get a status of the purchase. It can be a success, it can be an error, it can be a timeout. And user has to get some feedback that, okay, this purchase was successful now. And you also have to refresh the application to unlock the features for the user. And at this point, I have invested already 2 months of work, and it still wasn't guaranteed that the application will pass through the Apple and Google submission reviews, because some guidelines are really, really tricky, and you have to pass through 2 reviews. Once at Apple, once at Google. And by the way, every time you submit any minor bug fix, your application goes through this review every time. And some guidelines are really frustrating, so we have to study them very carefully. For example, if you try to avoid the payment procedure of Apple and Google by not paying them the commission for redirecting somewhere, you will get an instant ban by the bundle ID. So the application is not allowed to be published on the App Store anymore. And they will also check your web application, your website, when they download, the testers download your application. And if the mobile app is just a repackaged web application with no added value, they will also reject it because it doesn't provide any experience that the user expects from the mobile app. Or for example, of course, you would like to target both platforms, Apple and Google, and if accidentally you mention Google Play or Google or Android or something in your iOS application, they will also reject it. They will provide a feedback to remove it, but it won't pass through the review. And also, they don't like if you create an MVP and you are teasing some functionality with coming soon, this is coming soon, they will also reject it because the app doesn't look ready when you have these placeholders. And if your application, just by its concept, is another calculator with in-app payments, which are already thousands on the App Store, they will also reject it because it doesn't provide any additional experience to the users, and they don't want such application on the App Store. But we were lucky enough, and we studied the guidelines carefully, and we were happy to publish the application at the first try. And after all these steps were done, you can publish your application and profit from it. And on the screen, you see a QR code to my YouTube channel where I show you more insights about front-end development, about Angular, and about software development in general. So please subscribe.
Wow, that was a really great presentation. I think we all, as the Angular developers, should definitely explore the mobile environment. Yeah, as you mentioned, the injection tokens is something that makes Angular definitely great for using our existing business logic. Okay,
Absolutely.
I see. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, with other frameworks, you would have to implement it by your own.
Yeah, and that may be a lot of work. Okay, so we had first question, but Jerome already answered it. You can also give our response to this one. So, is the Angular team planning to create their own framework for mobile devices?
Well, I'm not on an Angular team, but I would think they would not, because there are already a lot of existing technologies, and the demand is not very big for that, for Angular mobile apps. Only if you have an existing application and you want to transform it, but I think Capacitor and Ionic are doing a great job with that.
Yeah, fully agree on this one. Angular often loves to reuse the stuff that community have built. So for example, we don't have Angular specific state management library from the Angular team. We use the NGXS, NGRX, and other libraries. Okay, I also see a question from Natalia. What do you miss the most in the Angular when it comes to building applications that run on mobile devices?
I never had any problems with Angular inside the mobile apps because the mobile web view is just a web browser, right? But the trickiest part of creating mobile applications from the front-end frameworks is that you have to handle Android and iOS at the same time. And sometimes they have separate configurations, they have separate edge cases, features, different updates. So for example, Android can support, from some update, they support edge to edge, from the edge of the screen to the edge of the screen, and your application immediately looks bad on that. You have to consider that. So all difficulties are connected with the mobile platforms and with their specifics, not with Angular.
Yeah, agree on this one. Okay, we also have another question. So how about if the app has an authentication at first? How the Apple Android team is going to test it? This is a good question in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a great question. So when you submit your application, you submit some metadata about your application. For example, they need a test user, of course, to log in and check everything, check the pages. You have to submit someone who can pick up the phone if they have any questions, and your website, information about your app. So there are a lot of forms you have to fill in order to submit your application, and one of them are the test credentials that they can use.
Okay, that answers this question fully. Okay, we have another question. If you were to build a mobile app from scratch, would you use Ionic or Capacitor?
Well, if I would build a mobile app from scratch, I wouldn't use any of that. I wouldn't even. Well, Angular is a great web framework, but for the mobile app, there are better suitable technologies, I would say. So this is a great use case for existing Angular application, because you don't want to rewrite the whole app, which was already programmed for years. It's not worth it. But for new applications, I would probably pick something else. Also, it depends on the requirement. Maybe you want completely separate applications.
Yeah, so to summarize, Angular is very good for writing mobile applications in case you already have a web application. And I will also add a note to this question. Ionic is just the UI library. It does not include any platform-specific logic. Basically what I mean, you can have a mobile Angular application without Ionic, but Capacitor is what you must have in case you're writing a mobile app. So yeah, okay. I also see another question. So is it possible to create a native iOS widget, a small part of your app? How does it work with system notification?
Do you mean with widget? Do you mean a widget that you can install on the home screen, or do you mean the in-app, the push notifications? Because I'm not aware if you can do the widget, because Capacitor and Ionic are just wrapping your web application, right? So for widgets, you would need probably a different solution. But push notifications and system notifications are possible, yeah. So you can do them. It supports them.
Okay. Okay, I think this is it when it comes for the questions. Thank you so much for your presentation. This was a lot of insights, especially about the approval process for the applications.
Thank you for inviting me.